honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelsey has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelsey's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelsey's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelsey's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear.
I view things as I got time. I got time to be able to grow and mature, and be able to understand the ins and outs of the defenses and be able to get the good insight from the vets in the room. So I look at it as, a plus. And whenever, it's time for me to play them.
Shedeur Sanders rolled into Browns camp and instantly made the whole practice feel like a recess pickup game. NFL vets suddenly looked like they'd forgotten the playbook and were just trying to keep up.
With that being said, I see some balls coming out of Shedeur Sanders at that game, and I'm like, kind of looks like a guy.
Yeah, I'm ready.
He can sling it.
Ready to I see him, some of the veterans, how they talk to him, mic'd up, see what he's doing in the community.
Yep. Talking about Njoku there?
Njoku, Mike Knapp. Yeah, once you see, different little interactions and things like that, I know he has the talent. We'll see. It'll be a competition that usually brings the best out of guys, especially young guys. So I'm interested to see how that quarterback situation.
Right after Shedeur Sanders tightened his cleats and the Browns settled in for what they figured was a routine camp day, the whole vibe tilted sideways. No blazing comet, no UFO touching down at midfield, just a swagger-charged quarterback striding in like he'd crashed the wrong league and thought, yeah, I'll stick around and run this show. The Browns had no clue what storm was rolling in. You'd expect an NFL team to do a quick scout, maybe pull up a highlight reel or two, but nope. They greeted Shedeur with a shrug, only to watch him seize the field on snap one and run the whole operation like a seasoned pro.
First and foremost, he's been the best quarterback in camp. Now look, Joe Flacco ain't had many opportunities. There was a whole day I saw he didn't throw the ball at all. Here's my theory on the situation. They already know who's starting in the number 2 is. They already know. Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders is already locked up. You're missing the boat, people. You're missing the boat. Your boy, Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, they're fighting.
Shedeur didn't merely clock in, he hijacked the session. One moment he's loosening his arm, the next he's roasting veteran QBs like faded names on busted draft boards. Defensive coordinators everywhere had the same gut punch reaction. His pocket poise, straight disrespectful. His timing, psychic, and every pass left his hand like it was laser guided to its mark. While Shedeur Sanders was slicing up routes, the Browns secondary looked less like an NFL backfield and more like a gaggle of dads sprinting through a Saturday fun run. Big on enthusiasm, short on closing speed. Coaches fought the urge to slam the emergency horn. Players traded wide-eyed, "Are we serious?" stares, and someone even double-checked that a hidden camera crew wasn't about to pop out of the tunnel. But nope, this was pure Shedeur. Half cold-blooded surgeon, half highlight factory. He wasn't dropping a casual "I'm here," he was crafting a masterclass. From the first rep, the tempo changed. Shedeur Sanders accepted the snap with steady footwork, diagnosed the Browns' single high shell, and delivered a tight window seam route that forced the free safety to recover late. Throughout the period, he manipulated leverage with quick shoulder fakes, moved through full field progressions, and released on time from a balanced base, consistently putting the ball on his receiver's upfield shoulder. Cleveland's coverage struggled on multiple fronts. Safeties hesitated between deep half responsibilities and underneath support, creating voids at 15 to 20 yards. Cornerbacks and off-man were caught in trail position when Sanders used rhythm throws on 3-step drops, while those who tried press technique had their inside hand neutralized by his receivers' outside releases. Linebackers widened to match shallow crossers, leaving the middle hook unguarded for pivot routes and option digs. One corner attempted a line of scrimmage jam. Sanders immediately adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade, releasing the ball before the break and rendering the press ineffective. Over the session, he showcased pocket discipline, reclimbing to maintain throwing lanes rather than drifting, and finished with a series of anticipatory throws against cover 2 cloud, fitting vertical outs between the flat and deep half defenders. Sanders' combination of rapid post-snap processing, precise ball placement, and pocket efficiency exposed coverage mismatches at every level and highlighted communication gaps in the Browns secondary. By mid-session, the Browns defensive staff clearly recognized their calls were outmatched. Every adjustment, a roll to cover 6, a simulated pressure, a late rotate to 2 high, was neutralized once Shedeur Sanders confirmed the post-snap picture. Routes that had taken weeks to script were beaten by timing and location. Comeback set at 12 yards broke open before the corner's transition. Slot seam outs dotted the void between the flat and deep half defender, and boundary receivers beat press with quick hand techniques, receiving the ball before the trail man could recover. Sanders' command was methodical. He used cadence to freeze plug blitzes, re-ID'd the mic when linebackers sugared the A-gaps, and maintained a firm base so he could reset and fire without resetting his feet. His receivers benefited from that rhythm. Top of the stem, eyes back. Ball delivered on their upfield shoulder, allowing immediate transition to YAC. The Browns front tried a late stunt to compress the pocket. Sanders climbed 2 steps, re-spotted the shallow crosser, and delivered in stride, turning a potential sack into a 20-yard gain. What stood out most was how little ramp-up Sanders needed. From his first series, he processed full field concepts at tempo, cycling through progression reads without hitching. The poise under interior pressure, consistency in ball placement, and ability to manipulate zone defenders left the Browns' coordinated disguise packages ineffective and forced them into static coverage by the end of the period. In short, Sanders' efficient mechanics, rapid processing, and anticipatory accuracy rendered Cleveland's defensive game plan ineffective at every level, from pre-snap disguise to post-snap spacing.
Imagine there's many people that think Dylan Gabriel's a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. I don't care where they were drafted. If the Browns are the one team that thinks that, then I'm going to suspect it's not true. They don't know what.
Listen, I've been on every quarterback evaluation for 30 years.
Right.
I never root against anybody.
Yeah.
But I'd be surprised if Dylan Gabriel's ever a legitimate starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. I'd be surprised. I just don't think.
Well, then it is a wasted pick because you took him in the top 100.
Yeah, but potentially.
Yeah.
May get away with it because of Shedeur.
An edge rusher chirped at Shedeur Sanders between snaps, hoping to shake his rhythm. On the very next play, Sanders answered with a 30-yard laser, a deep dig from the boundary side that split the single high safety and the trailing corner. He hit the top of a 5-step drop, kept a firm base, and delivered on time to the receiver's outside shoulder, turning what should have been a routine rep into a sudden change explosive. From that moment on, every coverage wrinkle the Browns tried, rotating from cover 3 to quarter half, flashing a Tampa 2 shell, mugging both A-gaps, was met with a precise counter. When corners pressed, Sanders adjusted the route to a back shoulder fade. When safeties widened, he checked to a glance post. When linebackers bailed, he found the running back on a delayed option out of the backfield. Even late simulated pressures couldn't move him off his spot. He simply climbed, reset his feet, and fired. As Cleveland's defenders rotated through checks, Sanders manipulated them with cadence and eye discipline. He froze weak side safeties long enough to create intermediate windows, then feathered the ball into those lanes before help could arrive. When the Browns finally dropped 7 and matched every route, Sanders tucked the ball and converted 2 separate 3rd and 6 situations on the ground, reminding everyone that his mobility is as calculated as his arm. By the end of the session, the defensive coordinator's call sheet looked obsolete. Sanders had neutralized blitz looks, exposed spacing issues in zone, and forced the unit into static base coverage just to survive the period. It wasn't a camp drill anymore. It was a clinic on timing, processing speed, and controlled aggression, delivered snap after snap by a quarterback who never needed a warm-up lap to own the field.
They never planned on taking him. The problem is, like Ocho Cinco said, you got somebody that has endeared himself to the locker room. And guess what? The difference between him and Tim Tebow, the biggest one, is he can play. He can throw the ball. Tim Tebow running around being an H-back, he can throw the ball. And he's done everything he needs to do. He ain't saying nothing. He ain't rocking the boat. He ain't mad about the reps. He ain't mad about none of that. All the people out there want to see is this, like Tyler said earlier. We want to see what he can do with Jerry Jeudy.
That's it.
I want to see what he can do with David Njoku. I want to see him with Junkins. I want to see him with the first running backs. If you are cooking, if you are beating down the doors with the 3s and 4s, guess what? You deserve more.
From the first team period on, Cleveland's secondary looked a step slow. A deep third safety hesitated on a post-snap rotation, leaving Shedeur Sanders free to climb the pocket and fire a 22-yard out that arrived before the defender could plant and drive. The supporting cast around him, players fighting for roster spots, not Pro Bowl invites, benefited from his command. Sanders used tempo to control the defensive front, altered protections at the line, and located throwing lanes so quickly that one receiver didn't register the catch until he crossed the goal line. As the Browns tried new personnel groups, coverage busts multiplied. Starters slipped out for hamstring stretches while rookies rotated in, only to find the ball arriving on their blind side before they'd completed a midpoint squeeze. On a later 3rd and long, Cleveland finally closed the interior rush lanes, compressing the pocket with 3 defenders. Sanders pivoted through the traffic, stepped into a narrow escape window, and without resetting his shoulders, whipped a no-look pass to the boundary curl for a fresh set of downs. The throw turned a potential sack into an explosive play and left the coaching staff scrambling for answers.
The people who are fascinated by Shedeur for whatever reason, whether it's his play, I guess last year was kind of fun. If you're just like a guy who grew up like loving Deion Sanders and passed that love on down to your kids, I can see why you're like that. The one thing I will give them is you're looking at this quarterback room. If you're a fan of Shedeur and say, why can't he go beat Dylan Gabriel or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett? So I do understand that part of it, right? Because why not? Why couldn't he be a Brown starter in October or November?
That looks like a quarterback room where everyone will get a chance to start. He lied to us all when he said that this was going to be an open competition, a 4-man open competition when it comes to the QB situation up there in Cleveland, in which, from the looks of it, all we've seen it be was a 3-man race. The only people that has been getting reps in with the first team or with the veterans are Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and Dylan Gabriel. We've never seen my boy Shedeur Sanders get a chance to get in. Even with him doing the things that he has been doing up there, he has yet to get in with the...
Shedeur Sanders was caught off guard by Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent remarks, which have sparked talk of bringing in another starting quarterback. Commentators are debating whether Stefanski's comments reflect eroding confidence in Sanders or a brief lapse in judgment, but the rookie now faces intensified scrutiny over his role.
The Browns, we got an analyst that says that Shedeur Sanders should have some kind of a ban? Banishment of some kind? Come again? Say what? For what? And we've got, this would be more troubling. If I'm a Browns fan, and this is where we're going to start, potential dissension in the ranks of the front office and the coach. And over what? Quarterback.
When a program's headline quarterback suddenly becomes the subject of sideline murmurs and quiet searches for replacements, the situation is unmistakable. It's a breach of trust. Shedeur Sanders, the passer who put Colorado back in national conversations with his production and profile, has just received a clear message that his job security is in question. Coach Kevin, the assistant previously considered to be in Sanders' corner, made remarks that ignited speculation about changing quarterbacks. Fans, analysts, and even Deion Sanders are now reassessing the team's unity and its true plan for the position. The comment was no accident. It was a deliberate signal that the staff may soon elevate a backup. For perspective, Shedeur Sanders did not step into ideal conditions last season. He was sacked so often that Colorado could have dedicated a locker to every opposing edge rusher who reached him.
Could I possibly go to bat for Kevin Stefanski as a great head coach? No, I couldn't.
Could you go at bat against him, saying he's a horrible head coach?
No, I can't. I think that's why we fall in the middle. I think that's why in a lot of these discussions, and that's why a lot of the rankings, you see him right now in that 15 to 20 range, somewhere in that middle pack of NFL head coaches.
I've said earlier, Kevin Stefanski has already been given more head coaches than any coach I've ever seen in Cleveland. Starting with the decision to move on from Baker and him clearly still having another level to get to in Tampa.
Last season, Shedeur Sanders often had to operate behind an offensive line that provided minimal protection, yet he still delivered precise throws and critical drives. At times, he seemed to be carrying a struggling roster almost on his own. Despite the constant pressure, he never complained, never threatened to transfer, and never acted entitled. He remained with Colorado because he trusted the program, trusted his father, and believed in the team's larger mission. That loyalty is why Coach Kevin Stefanski's recent statement that the quarterback competition is wide open struck so sharply. The remark implies that Sanders' starting role is insecure, as though the player who absorbed countless hits while holding the offense together is simply another name competing with walk-ons and first-year athletes who are still learning the cadence. This goes beyond ordinary coach language about fostering competition. It introduces genuine uncertainty about the staff's confidence in Sanders and invites speculation that Colorado is actively assessing outside options through the transfer portal. By characterizing the position as vacant, Stefanski has planted seeds of doubt that could quickly evolve into rumors and undermine the stability of the locker room.
I'm sorry, but when it comes to quarterback, I'm gonna defer to my head coach, generally speaking, especially one with Stefanski's track record and how he's viewed across the league. So this is interesting because it tells you Kevin Stefanski's not a Shedeur Sanders guy. And it also tells us who made these picks.
Exactly. The Cleveland Browns made a rather awkward decision in the NFL draft, opting to take quarterback Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round, well before he was expected to fly off the board. Then 2 rounds later, the Browns took fellow quarterback Shedeur Sanders. So what exactly is going on?
Discussion has begun about whether Colorado is actively evaluating another quarterback and preparing for life after Shedeur Sanders. Analysts are debating whether Coach Kevin's move is calculated strategy or a misstep that jeopardizes team stability. Sanders remains a top NFL prospect, Deion Sanders' son, and the program's public face. His highlights dominate social media and his jerseys outsell the team's victories. Yet he is once again being asked to reaffirm his position. The issue is more than routine roster management. It intersects with the family dynamics that shape the program. By portraying the quarterback job as open, Coach Kevin signals to both Shedeur and Deion that the staff is willing to move on despite Sanders' stature. For Shedeur, sitting through film sessions while hearing talk of potential replacements adds an unwelcome layer of uncertainty to an otherwise proven resume. The decision may reflect a desire for a quarterback with a different profile, perhaps someone more mobile and system-oriented, rather than a dismissal of Sanders' accomplishments.
We've got news.
Got news.
About my Cleveland Browns. We've got an oblique problem. Obliques are big deals, especially when it's your quarterback. Now, he might be 4th on the depth chart, but he was number 1 in the preseason game last week, and he did a great job. 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shedeur Sanders has an oblique injury. That is not good. I do not like this. I hate this because I want to see more reps for Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, a projected breakout this season, has been sidelined unexpectedly. The Browns coaching staff confirmed an oblique injury significant enough to keep him out of all activity. No reps, no drills, no warm-ups. Concerns are rising about how this may affect his momentum and force adjustments to the team's plan. The focus now is his recovery timeline, the impact on his development, and the next steps for the quarterback depth chart.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders injured his oblique during practice today, putting his status in doubt for Saturday's preseason game against the Eagles. He's the latest quarterback on Cleveland's roster who has dealt with a health issue, joining fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Sanders, who is trying to fight his way up the Browns' depth chart, started the preseason opener last week and threw to practice. So how concerning is this for Shedeur as he is trying to, again, make his way up the depth chart, be QB2, potentially QB1 in the future?
Dillon Gabriel taking Shedeur Sanders' QB1 spot after Sanders suffers an oblique injury is more than a roster change. It signals the staff is choosing urgency over efficiency. You do not replace a quarterback operating near a 70% completion rate with one coming off a 32% outing unless the decision is driven by desperation or poor evaluation. That is not strategy, it is avoidable loss of production. The impact on accuracy, timing, and drive sustainability is clear, and the difference is apparent to anyone watching.
Well, here's what we know. I mean, after practice, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, was not available to the media, but I did talk to him on the field as the players were coming off, and he told me that Shedeur Sanders complained of oblique soreness during the warm-ups this morning.
Shedeur Sanders' absence isn't just a gap in the lineup, it's a setback for the entire offense. He thrives under pressure and makes throws others won't attempt. When he's healthy, every pass has intent, every drive has rhythm, and opposing defenses know they're in for a long day. Replace him with Dillon Gabriel and the defense senses an opening. Corners press tighter, safeties cheat down, and linebackers blitz more aggressively because they don't expect the same timing, velocity, or accuracy.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm not even going to try to hide it. Rich,
you guys are fans. Like, you guys talk about the Cleveland Browns quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's almost annoying to me.
It aggravates people. Like, people don't like the fact that Rich talks a lot about
They must love I'm here.
But it's like, you have a friend, and that friend's child is following in the family's footsteps. You want them to do well. I don't know why people have such an issue. I know Rich is supposed to be impartial, but it's kind of hard when you have that type of tie to it. But yeah, I'm rooting for Shedeur, man. And
Dillon Gabriel's 32% completion rate isn't just poor, it's untenable at this level. A number that low needs no context. It means 2 misses for every completion. Weather, opponent, and play calls are secondary when efficiency is that limited. That output does not sustain drives or keep the full playbook viable, yet he is starting while Shedeur Sanders is sidelined. The contrast is clear. Sanders brings accuracy, timing, and command. Gabriel's recent performance reflects inconsistency and missed opportunities. Choosing Gabriel under these circumstances reduces offensive reliability and invites defensive pressure. It is a decision that sacrifices efficiency and field position.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dillon Gabriel, but to the Shedeur Sanders point, it is unfortunate because I thought he was gaining some momentum. I know the practice that they had before they left for Philly, Daniel Oyefusi reported that he actually took the most reps of all of the quarterbacks. And that was the first time that had happened. It was the first time that he had went ahead of Dillon Gabriel, practicing with the twos, etc. So like coming off that stout performance against the Carolina Panthers, he was gaining momentum.
If this were a clean evaluation, there would be no debate. Shedeur Sanders is the clear choice. He's accurate, composed, and consistent with a track record of high-level production. Dillon Gabriel remains a question mark, and not the kind that stresses defense. He's the kind that makes coaches consider leaning on the run to limit risk and protect field position. The reality is that injuries create openings for players who haven't earned them. Gabriel has stepped into QB1 while Sanders is out, but that reflects circumstance, not superiority.
We don't know the severity of this oblique injury and whether it will even keep him out of Saturday's game against the Eagles. As for moving up the depth chart, I'm the Browns preseason sideline reporter. I was there Friday night when he burst onto the stage and set the NFL world buzzing. And yes, his demeanor was tremendous. His poise was tremendous. He did the things that were asked of him. But at the end of the day, he wasn't actually asked to do all that much.
The real concern is how this could attach to Shedeur Sanders' reputation. The NFL is unforgiving about availability. An oblique injury for a quarterback isn't minor. It affects mechanics, torque, and timing. Even with a strong return, the injury-prone label can linger. For the Cleveland Browns, or any team seeking stability under center, that perception is toxic. Teams don't want a player they fear won't make it through October. That's the risk. Talent doesn't always overcome league politics. Once questions about durability start, they rarely fade. They surface in contract terms, roster decisions, and sideline evaluations.
So Shedeur Sanders is injured again? If you were following along on social media today for the Browns' first joint practice in Philadelphia against the Eagles, wow, you were in for a tumultuous ride. I mean, all the reporters, both Browns and Eagles reporters, were pretty much flabbergasted at the fact that Shedeur Sanders was taking 0 team reps during the day, and even Tyler Huntley was getting team reps instead of Shedeur. And then it came out, obviously, everybody's speculating. There's people calling for Kevin's jobs, and before I go any further, I don't blame anybody, ever.
Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's numbers should be sidelining him, not elevating him. A 32% completion rate isn't a dip, it's a warning sign that points to issues with field vision, timing, and receiver cohesion. That's the quarterback taking snaps while Shedeur Sanders is out. Put their work side by side and the gap is obvious. Sanders shows consistent placement, timing, and footwork that reflect high-level execution. Gabriel's recent output introduces variability that shrinks the call sheet and stalls drives. You can't claim the priority is winning while starting a quarterback who isn't reliably delivering routine completions. Fans recognize it, receivers lose confidence and tempo when targets are off, the offensive line's urgency fades when protection doesn't translate into productive throws, team belief in the quarterback is fragile, and once it erodes, a season can come apart quickly.
We could be looking at, 3/4 of Snoop and maybe 1/4 of Dillon Gabriel. Not really exciting for the fans. Of course, it would be nice to see what Dillon looks like. Did spend third-round capital on him.
If you're Dillon Gabriel and you're a rookie,
is not
you
be
want to get
team.
healed. You want the reps. You want to take these reps. So what do you do to prepare yourself and get ready? Because, man, when rookies get injured, it's like these reps are so valuable.
Yeah, sets them back a lot. We do have some video here. Mike Garafolo had some video of Jalen Hurts kind of helping Shedeur used his cart to get off the field here.
Shedeur Sanders changes the entire equation. His presence under center keeps defenses honest, keeps teammates engaged, and expands the coaching staff's options. You can call vertical shots, open the playbook, and control the game's tempo. Dillon Gabriel limits that. With him, the playbook narrows, drives stall, and the defense ends up on the field too long trying to compensate. The Cleveland Browns are not in a position to gamble at quarterback. This is a franchise with a difficult history at the position. With Gabriel, the issues are visible from the stands. A 32% completion rate won't jump to 60% with a few extra reps. If anything, it will decline as defenses present looks they would not risk against Shedeur. And that's the core issue. Shedeur Sanders at 80% is still a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel at his best. That isn't exaggeration, it's the numbers. If Sanders is a 70% passer when healthy, even a drop to 60% keeps him well ahead of where Gabriel is now. Yet the team is rolling with the quarterback who isn't delivering routine completions. Every week Sanders is out, his hold on QB1 loosens. That's the hard truth. The longer Gabriel stays in the role, the more coaches cite continuity and chemistry to cover what's happening on the field. Every throw and every drive has to be a statement, not just to win, but to erase any notion that Gabriel is a legitimate alternative. In the NFL, QB1 isn't handed back because you used to be the best option. You have to take it.
Started off with some positive news for Shedeur, and then it kind of just went left real quick. Shedeur got the news early on that if Dillon Gabriel couldn't go, he would get his second straight start in the Saturday preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then he went on to injure his oblique. For the fans who don't know exactly what part of the body the oblique is at and what that injury is and how it can impact the quarterback, can you explain to them what is an oblique injury?
It's like up in this area, right? Well, you can't see me, but like right up in here, when you go to throw, like obviously that's all that. So
the truth is straightforward. The Cleveland Browns, or any team in this situation, aren't going anywhere meaningful with Dillon Gabriel under center. You can frame it as progress and point to selective highlights, but reality will level it out, and by then the season is already slipping. Shedeur Sanders is the difference between a team with a path forward and the team playing out the schedule. He reads coverages, delivers on-time throws, and forces defenses to respect every level of the field. Gabriel turns the offense into guesswork. The NFL is built on results, and the results are clear. Gabriel's 32% completion rate functions as a warning sign. It doesn't need context, a clinic, or a film session to explain. It signals inefficiency that stalls drives and compresses the playbook. Yet he has been handed the role Shedeur established through precision, composure, and production. That decision undercuts the stated goal of winning. With Sanders, the offense retains structure, rhythm, and threat. With Gabriel, it narrows and exposes the defense to longer stretches on the field.
What it is that they're doing is they're treating Shedeur Sanders like a 5th round pick. Right? We're not covering every 5th round pick in the NFL hoping that he gets an opportunity to be the starter on day one. We felt like, oh my goodness, they got a diamond in the rough. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. They felt like they evaluated him there, and that's where they picked him. And they're playing the guy that they picked in the 3rd round over him because they evaluate him at a higher level than what they do Shedeur Sanders. And I get it.
The Cleveland Browns are once again creating problems of their own. Their latest misstep centers on Shedeur Sanders. Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky have both noted that Cleveland is repeating the same mistakes. The team spent valuable draft capital and is now undermining that investment. This reflects a persistent issue in the organization's decision-making. It's not just a football decision, it's a pattern of self-inflicted setbacks.
Habits and some of the traits that we saw show up in college were very prevalent this past weekend against the Rams. Holding onto the football, catching the snap and not reading the defense, kind of evaluating what the defensive line is doing, and then trying to see if you can go make a play, and that's the concern. Okay, it's 1st and 10. They want a play-action double move at the bottom of the screen. The route doesn't win, and then the protection breaks down a little bit. You're taught as a young quarterback, protection breaks down, find the closest check down. It's right there, it's 1st and 10. He gets to like the 4th part of the...
The Cleveland Browns have long carried a reputation for instability. Even when it appears they are turning a corner, the organization finds a way to create new problems. Momentum gives way to questionable decisions, and progress stalls. The latest situation centers on Shedeur Sanders. It highlights recurring issues in leadership, planning, and execution. Instead of establishing a clear path forward, Cleveland risks undermining its own investment.
There's a lot of players who feel like they should have been picked at a certain spot, should have been viewed in a certain way. But when you get on these teams, it's about developing the team, not doing what's individually best for a certain player. And that's what Kevin Stefanski has to do. And I get it. We want to say all the reasons why what's happening to him isn't right. But maybe we aren't right on the way that not only the entire NFL viewed him, but now the Cleveland Browns view him as well.
Shedeur Sanders was not brought in to be a placeholder or a scapegoat. He is expected to be the long-term solution, a high-upside quarterback with the tools, poise, and Sanders' pedigree to elevate the roster. The focus should be on developing him and positioning him to lead the team forward.
They sabotaged it. They rigged it against him today, putting him in with 3rd and 4th stringers, 5th stringers. You got no shot at quarterback. They threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski. It's a desperate, dangerous situation in which he's got no shot, man. He's throwing to Sal freaking Canella? What? But he got sacked 5 times because he's hanging on the ball trying to make a play, and nobody can separate. Then it comes down to a couple of minutes are left, and Shedeur tries to go on the field, and Stefanski puts Tyler Huntley in place of him. Excruciating to watch.
Shedeur Sanders brings accuracy at all levels, steady leadership, and the kind of composure that comes from handling pressure. Fans were energized, and the league was paying attention. For once, Cleveland had a credible source of hope at quarterback. Then the familiar pattern returned. Instead of committing to a clear development plan, first-team reps, stable direction, and a defined timeline, the Browns introduced uncertainty and slowed his progress. Rather than building around him and giving Shedeur a direct path to lead, they split priorities and sent mixed signals. The result is momentum stalled at the very point it should be accelerating.
I also can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They've made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after session.
This wasn't about scheme or play design. It was a pattern of mismanaging a young quarterback. From the start, the signs were clear. Shedeur Sanders arrived at camp without priority first-team reps or the confidence-building snaps a rookie need. Instead of a defined development plan, he was asked to compete from behind, treated like a depth option rather than a long-term starter. The message was, earn it later rather than build it now. When game action came, he was put on the field with limited preparation. Protection was inconsistent, and the play calling did little to ease his transition, more a stress test than a structured debut. The approach emphasized survival over progression, creating conditions where mistakes were likely and growth was harder to achieve. Analysts Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted the same points. The issues reflected organizational choices, not a shortfall in Sanders' ability. This was not a rookie collapsing under pressure. It was a franchise failing to provide the support, reps, and clarity required for a first-year quarterback to succeed.
Shedeur moves slowly, kind of trying to see what's going on, and then that creates that sack fumble. So a lot of the stuff that we just saw in college is a big deal. This ball gets snapped at the 48-yard line. Defense has won the rep. Play is dead. Throw the ball away. It's first down. But instead we run and it's a 2.5, 3-yard loss. So instead of being 2nd and 10, we're 2nd and 13, we're dead. Again, here's the opportunity to throw the juke route. Hold, scramble. So some of those things that I was and others were concerned about on the college tape showed itself again. This is not the end of the world, though. This is part of his development.
Cleveland managed to take a highly promising rookie and within weeks put him in a position where he looked unprepared. Ryan Clark called out the core issue. A first-year quarterback cannot succeed without protection, clear situations, and a controlled environment. Dan Orlovsky added that when a young quarterback isn't given structure, support, or coherent schemes, you're not evaluating ability, you're manufacturing failure. That's what happened to Shedeur Sanders. Browns fans weren't just disappointed with the results, they were alarmed by the process. This is a fan base familiar with quarterback missteps, yet even they recognize the pattern. A talented prospect subjected to poor planning and inconsistent guidance. After one preseason setback, the conversation shifted toward maybe Shedeur isn't ready instead of examining coaching, play design, and preparation. The reality is clear. The question isn't whether Sanders is ready, it's whether the Browns were prepared to develop and support him.
Well, that would be a nice exit strategy because he would come up as doing Shedeur a favor. Like
one's got to go, right? One's got to go. See, to clear this thing up.
At some point, but I'm sorry, I know they don't care. If they were to trade Shedeur Sanders now after that preseason performance and he would go on to be good.
The organization has cycled through quarterbacks for years, and the pattern is unchanged. Blame the player, protect the system, and repeat the same mistakes. Fans are split. Some argue Shedeur Sanders needs time and support, while others treat one rough outing as proof he isn't the answer. That division hides the real problem, the Browns' process. This isn't Shedeur failing, it's the team failing Shedeur. Across the league, successful teams create clear development paths. Kansas City brought Patrick Mahomes along behind a veteran and tailored the offense before handing him the job. Houston committed to CJ Stroud, built around his strengths, and let him grow with consistent direction. Smart teams invest, protect, and show belief. Cleveland did the opposite with Shedeur. Uneven reps, inconsistent protection, and unclear plans. Then question the outcome. That's not development, it's organizational mismanagement.
These players have played a tremendous amount of football.
Right.
And I remember last year when Bo Nix came out of Oregon, we talked about all the easy throws Oregon creates.
Right.
The level of the skill players that are around him. And then we watched Bo Nix acclimate to the NFL game extremely quickly. I see a lot of those same traits in Dillon Gabriel. He gets the football out of his hands. He takes the throw that's available to him. He plays on time. And part of whether or not you get an opportunity to get on the field is the people that you're competing against. And I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to Shedeur, because I'm not only a fan, it's somebody I want to see succeed.
The Browns will likely present this as part of a deliberate development plan, tough standards, resilience building, and testing a rookie under pressure. In practice, it isn't development. It's a damaging approach that undercuts growth. The organization has not shown a consistent model for nurturing young talent, and Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted that publicly. After Shedeur Sanders stumbled in a preseason game, the reaction was immediate. Headlines, polarized fan takes, and sweeping conclusions about his readiness. The front office offered little acknowledgement of the conditions he was placed in. Clark's point was direct. You do not evaluate a rookie by how he looks in a setup designed for failure. You evaluate him when he's properly supported. Orlovsky explained how poor coaching choices, protection, sequencing, and role clarity can quickly erode confidence and stall development. The issue was not Sanders' ability, it was Cleveland's process, which appeared disorganized and unprofessional for an NFL operation. Shedeur Sanders did not treat day 4 of Browns training camp as anything other than work. He completed 8 of 11 passes with 3 touchdowns, operating with control and accuracy throughout the red zone periods. The throws were varied, a well-placed ball to rookie Luke Floria that led him across the goal line in stride, a firm throw to Cade McDonald over middle after a quick read, and a tight window completion to Deontay Johnson at the back of the end zone with 2 defenders closing. The sequence showed timing, poise, and placement under pressure. While national attention centered on Joe Flacco's underneath completions and Kenny Pickett's option and rollout periods, Sanders produced scoring plays on schedule. The performance was not the product of broken coverages or end-of-period reps. It came within structured work with defenders in position and the offense executing standard progressions. The accuracy rate, 8 completions on 11 attempts, reflected consistent mechanics and decisions. The operation was steady from huddle to snap to finish. Despite that session, the distribution of first-team snaps did not change. Camp logs indicated that Pickett and Dillon Gabriel continued rotating with the starters, while Sanders remained primarily with the second unit. With the first preseason game approaching, that choice drew more attention from observers who expected productive days to be followed by expanded opportunities. The question surfaced again: what additional evidence is required to evaluate Sanders with the top group? The 3 touchdowns illustrated different aspects of his profile. On the throw to Floria, Sanders used a measured trajectory to lead the receiver away from contact and into the end zone. On the ball to Johnson, he identified leverage, held the safety with his shoulders, and delivered to a precise spot at the back line. On the throw to McDonald, he eliminated the first read, reset, and drove the ball into the window before the hook defender could squeeze it. Each score reflected a particular tool: anticipation, manipulation, and velocity within standard timing. Comparisons to the other quarterbacks were straightforward. Pickett produced 2 touchdowns but placed 1 late ball that exposed a receiver to contact near the goal line. Gabriel accounted for 1 score, with additional gains coming on checkdowns and designed movement. Flacco advanced the ball in short increments without finishing drives during the same period. Sanders converted opportunities into points repeatedly and without turnovers. The rotation, however, remained unchanged. Head coach Kevin Stefanski and the staff continued to allocate first-team work to the same group, describing the process as an open evaluation. In practice, that has meant extended starter reps for Pickett and Gabriel, veteran scripts for Flacco, and second unit periods for Sanders. The disconnect between output and opportunity was notable, particularly given the stated goal of reaching an early decision at quarterback. When asked about the timeline recently, Stefanski said the preference was to decide sooner sooner rather than later, an acknowledgement that the window for assessment is limited as preseason approaches. Speculation about motives is common in such situations. The discussion has included references to front office perspectives and ownership influence. Owner Jimmy Haslam is widely viewed as supportive of drafting Sanders. General Manager Andrew Berry is known for prioritizing fit, traits, and process within the roster building model. Stefanski reports to Berry, and the practice plan reflects coaching evaluation within organizational parameters. None of that guarantees any outcome. It does explain why rotations can remain conservative even after strong individual periods. Regardless of internal views, the most useful next step for the evaluation would be a defined set of first-team snaps for Sanders to put comparable tape next to his peers. There was also outside attention on several practice segments from earlier in camp that showed Sanders throwing during lulls to non-receiver personnel, ball attendants, staffers, and assistants, while other quarterbacks were in script with full units. Those clips circulated widely and were interpreted by some as dismissive. Sanders addressed questions about it by narrowing the focus to preparation, explaining that his responsibility is to be ready for the work assigned and that he has adjusted at every level of competition, from HBCU ball to the Power 5 and now the NFL. The response matched his general approach: acknowledge the situation, maintain routine, and continue to execute when the next period begins. The broader draft day and narrative context remains part of the conversation. Sanders' college resume included efficient production and high completion rates across 2 programs, culminating in national recognition such as the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. His selection in the 5th round was driven by varying evaluations of projection, scheme fit, and development timelines. The result is the current environment. He must present his case within limited windows, then wait for access to the next rung of competition. That does not make the process unfair, it makes it exacting. The best answer, for him and for the staff, is additional, comparable reps and clear tape. Fan reaction after day 4 was direct. Social accounts and comment threads filled with assessments that centered on performance rather than reputation. Sanders produced 3 touchdowns, avoided negative plays, and showed command in the red zone. Supporters pointed to that tape and asked for opportunities with the starters to verify whether the same rhythm carries over with the top receivers and linemen. The message was not about headlines. It was about the logic of evaluation in a compressed calendar. From an operational standpoint, Sanders' day reflected consistent fundamentals. His base was disciplined, his eyes matched his feet, and his timing aligned with route depths. On the Johnson score, he used a subtle shoulder turn to hold the safety before resetting and throwing to the back line. On the McDonald throw, the ball was out on the second hitch, arriving before the defenders could converge. On the Floria play, the arc and placement minimized the hit risk and maximized the run-through. Those are portable traits. They translate across units if the timing with receivers is established through reps. The staff's balancing act is real. They must prepare the presumed week 1 starter with sufficient continuity while also giving developmental players enough exposure to judge ceiling and floor. That tension is present in every camp. The cleanest path through it is to carve out defined first-team sequences for each competitor and evaluate the tape against comparable defenses and situations: high red zone, low red zone, 3rd and medium, and 2-minute. Sanders' performance on day 4 strengthened the case for such an allocation. Context matters off the field as well. Earlier in the offseason, 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, prompted public comment from Berry, who emphasized standards and safety. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents and moved on. In camp, he has kept the focus on football tasks, install retention, cadence management, protection IDs, and post-practice review. He has also continued to build rapport across position groups, including veteran receivers and defensive backs, so that timing and expectations are clear when reps arrive. None of this diminishes the experience of the veterans in the room. Flacco has decades of film, Pickett has multiple seasons of NFL starts, and Gabriel brings mobility and a defined collegiate profile. It does, however, underscore the purpose of camp, to align decisions with current performance. Sanders produced the most efficient scoring period of the day. The next logical step is to see that operation with the starting unit, document the results, and compare them to the other candidates under the same conditions. The preseason opener will compress timelines lines further. Install packages expand, and coaches begin to narrow personnel groupings. If the objective is to identify the quarterback who can operate the offense most cleanly on Sundays, then structured exposure now will give the staff better information later. A small but deliberate set of first-team snaps for Sanders, scripted early downs, a third down sequence, and a red zone series would provide data without disrupting broader preparation. Until that occurs, Sanders can only continue to control process and execution. Day 4 showed what that looks like when opportunities align. Efficient reads, disciplined mechanics, and finishes in the end zone. He did not seek attention for the sequence. He put it on tape. If the evaluation remains consistent with the stated competition, comparable snaps should follow. If they do, the staff will have a clear, side-by-side measure. If they do not, the question from observers will remain the same. What more needs to be seen to justify the look? For now, the record from day 4 is clear. 8 completions on 11 attempts, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, red zone precision, consistent control at the line and in the pocket. Those are tangible outputs. They merit a defined opportunity with the starters as the team moves toward preseason and the decision that follows. Whether or not that opportunity arrives immediately, Sanders has shown the preparation and execution necessary to be evaluated on equal footing. The next step is a matter of allocation, not speculation.
You first, when you take a look at both of these QBs, who had the most impressive start so far in the preseason?
Well, to me, it was Shedeur. I didn't see any interceptions when he was out there. You see anything like that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't think Dillon Gabriel did a bad job. I was impressed with the brother, but I'm going to go with Shedeur. You know, the pressure was on him. The spotlight was on him.
Stephen A. Smith didn't just call out Dillon Gabriel. He held him accountable and made him rethink his comments. The moment Dillon Gabriel spoke and went after Shedeur Sanders, it wasn't a minor slip. He crossed the line and stepped directly into Stephen A. Smith's wheelhouse. And Smith answered with a clear, direct response that left no room for misinterpretation.
The comparisons were emanating from the media more so than anybody else. And that's what I think, that's exactly who I think he was directing his comments towards. Having said that, Dillon Gabriel, respectfully, it was stupid. A very dumb comment to make. First of all, let me tell you something right now. In every walk of life, far beyond the parameters of a football field.
This wasn't casual sports commentary, it was a decisive critique. Dillon Gabriel's comments were taken apart by Stephen A. Smith with clear, direct points. Gabriel, a quarterback with solid stats but limited top-level achievements, chose to take a public shot at Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur, who has handled sustained media scrutiny and on-field expectations, became the target of an unnecessary criticism. Smith responded by challenging Gabriel's standing to make that claim, and by defending Sanders on the facts. The outcome was clear. Gabriel overreached, and Sanders didn't deserve the hit.
Dan Orlovsky would sit up here in comparison to Shedeur Sanders, who did no such thing, and say, hey, thought he looked better. I thought, I mean, I got to give him the edge here. I thought it wasn't bad. A pick six and a fumble, and we can get over fumbles. Have you heard anybody say that? I know it's possible. Have you ever heard anybody say, we can get over?
Stephen A. Smith responded immediately. As soon as Dillon Gabriel made his comments about Shedeur Sanders, Smith delivered a clear, point-by-point critique that drew national attention across the NCAA media cycle. Dillon Gabriel has a reputation as a good quarterback, not a dominant one. He can post strong numbers against opponents like Tulsa, but his performance has been inconsistent when the stakes in competition rise to playoff level.
Well, those who produce get treated differently than those who don't. What he said echoes the mentality of all of America practically, and most certainly the world, as we see things being globalized more and more every day. It was a stupid, idiotic, immature comment, because clearly you were feeling the heat because a lot of people was talking about how Shedeur should be QB.
Dillon Gabriel is a capable quarterback, but not a standout. Even so, he chose to talk down to Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback who has navigated constant scrutiny and pressure and still represents the future of a program that was struggling before he arrived. The comparison was weak. The criticism was unnecessary. Stephen A. Smith recognized that and dismantled Gabriel's argument with a clear, direct response.
How the Browns react to this, how the locker room reacts to this, how Shedeur reacts to this, because it was a clear shot at Shedeur. But let's say Dillon Gabriel's talking about the media. How could you be a brand new quarterback in the NFL and the first time you get behind a mic after your first game, you throw the media under the bus? That's out of arrogance.
Stephen A. Smith excels in moments like this. When Dylan Gabriel made his remarks about Shedeur Sanders, Smith responded with a focused, direct critique. He questioned Gabriel's standing to make that claim, noting that Gabriel has transferred between programs and has not been a Heisman finalist. Without theatrics, Smith laid out why Gabriel's resume doesn't justify taking public shots at Sanders. Smith's point was clear. Targeting Shedeur Sanders, a quarterback central to his program's future and consistently under intense scrutiny, was misplaced. Gabriel's criticism lacked the substance to support it, and Smith methodically showed why.
Today on his 42nd
I want you to be meaner.
birthday. That's number one. Number two, after the game, the Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski said there was a mix-up in the routes and that players were in the area that they shouldn't have been.
Look at Stephen A's face. Look at Stephen A's face. Look at his face.
Stephen A.
Oh my Lord.
The strength of Stephen A. Smith's response was that he didn't just address Gabriel's remarks. He challenged the image around him. Dylan Gabriel often presents himself as an overlooked contender ready to surprise. But the reality is that his profile hasn't commanded broad attention. It's a clear reminder that not every opinion carries equal weight. In defending Shedeur Sanders, Stephen A. was direct and precise. Shedeur isn't just a quarterback. He is Deion Sanders' son, which subjects him to scrutiny far beyond anything Gabriel has faced. Even under that pressure, Shedeur has maintained his composure, shown confidence, and delivered in key moments that helped revive a program many had written off.
Stupidity, all of it. I thought it was a clear shot at Shedeur due to the fact that his Oregon coach threw a shot at Coach Prime and Shedeur during their meeting at Colorado last year. But you know what? The cream rises to the top. Let's see what happens this week. I see a lot of the media talking about they think it was about the media and not about Shedeur. And I think that's a chess move.
For Dylan Gabriel to take shots at Shedeur Sanders was a miscalculation. Stephen A. Smith made the mismatch clear. Gabriel's attempt to shame Sanders was unnecessary and counterproductive. You don't target Deion Sanders' son when Deion has turned Colorado into primetime television. It underscored that Dylan Gabriel has often played with a chip on his shoulder because the spotlight hasn't followed him. He has been around long enough to compile numbers but not to earn broad respect. That's why going after Shedeur was misguided. Sanders, despite ups and downs, drives headlines. Gabriel's most notable headlines have been his transfers. Stephen A. Smith pressed that point without hesitation, challenging Gabriel's standing and leaving his argument looking like a forced throw that turns into a pick six.
You know what? Still needs to thank me a little bit more for that restaurant I treated him and his family to because it was big time. And stop embarrassing me by going places and trying to use coupons. That's how pathetic he is. The point is that yeah, a pick six and a fumble is usually considered a bad day.
Stephen A. Smith didn't need to raise his voice to make the point. He presented Dylan Gabriel as a player whose talk outpaces his resume and defended Shedeur Sanders with clear comparisons. That's why he called Gabriel out so directly. The comparison wasn't just unfair, it was forced. Now look at Gabriel's record. The numbers are solid and he can win against average defenses, but the resume lacks defining markers. There's no sustained Heisman contention, no late season surge that reshaped the national picture, and no postseason moment that cements a legacy. The track record reflects steady production, not top-tier impact. That's the gap Smith underscored. Gabriel's criticism of Shedeur Sanders wasn't supported by what he has accomplished, while Sanders continues to carry a program under constant scrutiny.
Let's see some of them step up and make some plays out there.
Ain't no way.
Gabriel
ain't no way. He not built like that. No way.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way.
Oh my God, why did he stop playing?
Now it's a foot race. And that is that.
They told me bust out my AP, perfect timing. H-shot, we about to get legendary. Shedeur started next game, baby. Shout out Dylan though, you know what I'm saying? Bro, I love you, my heart. What am I bigger than cheese, bro? You know what I'm saying? But Shedeur got it.
Shedeur Sanders is a national brand who draws viewers for both performance and result. Dylan Gabriel's attempt to diminish him read as resentment. And Stephen A. Smith called out the insecurity and lack of awareness directly. Colorado under Deion Sanders is prime time and Shedeur sits at the center of that spotlight. If Gabriel expected the sports world to agree while he took a shot at Shedeur, he misread the moment. Smith dismantled the argument and questioned the credibility behind it. Gabriel will move on. on. He'll keep playing, give interviews, and have fans, but this exchange will trail his media profile as a reminder of a misstep. It's a clear example of a resume that doesn't justify taking public aim at a quarterback carrying that level of scrutiny and responsibility.
For the Cleveland Browns preseason game today is that the way that some white folks watched Shedeur Sanders last week is the way that some black folks were watching Dillon Gabriel today. And it's not Dillon Gabriel for Dillon Gabriel's sake. Most folks don't have a problem with Dillon Gabriel. It's what he represents, which is the disrespect of a black person for no other apparent reason than they are a confident black person.
Dillon Gabriel thought he was aiming up. Instead, he was placed back among quarterbacks who are good but not great. Stephen A. Smith made the central point. Dillon Gabriel doesn't shape the conversation. Sports are about narrative as much as numbers, and Gabriel's story doesn't move the culture, while Shedeur Sanders does. Smith highlighted that contrast clearly. By the end, Gabriel's credibility had taken a measurable hit. The critique was decisive and sent a broader message to any player considering public shots at Shedeur Sanders. If you step into that debate, you will be held to a higher standard and your resume will be tested. Dillon Gabriel learned that the hard way.
So before your final year at Miami, there's a lot of conversations revolved around Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, I'm assuming you guys have a great relationship. Some of the clips you've seen and stuff like that. What is it like for you to have like this rivalry with Shedeur?
I don't have a rivalry with him. That's my boy. So at the end of the day, this whole process, we thought me and him were going to be 1 and 2 the whole time. Whether he's 1, I'm 2, whether I'm 1, he's 2. And so that's just always been, our mindset. It didn't go that way. I thought he was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft as well, even throughout college. A lot of stuff out there on him ain't really, the truth, just because they spin it different ways. Like they spin stuff about me different ways. But I mean, when he gets his chance, become a starter, I know he's gonna make the most of it. And I'm ready to get back to work with him, after the season, talk some more stuff to him.
Cam Ward directly challenged the uneven standards applied to Shedeur Sanders, calling them inconsistent and unfair. By insisting that performance, not politics, guide evaluation, he shifted the discussion from one player to a league-wide problem. Sanders' treatment now serves as a test of how the NFL supports and evaluates emerging quarterbacks.
I feel a special relationship with him, especially me. First getting to know him 5 years ago when I started working with him. But it did surprise me because he's a good quarterback. It doesn't get a lot of the credit that he deserves. Especially the plays that he made in Colorado. A lot of quarterbacks in the country are making those plays. So when he gets this opportunity, I'm pretty sure he'll have it soon today. He'll make sure he'll make plays on the field.
Cam Ward's public challenge to the treatment of Shedeur Sanders brought the issue into clear view. For months, discussion around Sanders has centered on his profile, major compensation, a prominent Nike deal, and the expectation to stabilize a struggling franchise. Rather than a standard evaluation of a top prospect, he has faced sustained skepticism from analysts, fans, and league voices. Ward's comments underscored that the standards being applied to Sanders diverge from those used with other rookies. By stating it directly, he did more than support another quarterback. He identified a broader problem in how the league responds to young players with significant visibility. The takeaway is direct. Assessments should reflect on-field performance and development, not external narratives.
A generational talent. I'm gonna prove him right. I'm gonna prove him right, don't worry. Oh my God. An article came out today. I'm generational. So I guess it's article versus article. I like that you think that, man. But we all know the truth. What? Trav gonna be first? You generational, I'm legendary. That's cool. We can be legendary. Legendary get their ass. We'll start going in like 5 minutes.
Shedeur Sanders entered the league with more than a playbook. He brought a public brand, a family legacy, and expectations unusual for a first-year quarterback. Before his first regular season throw, he was already positioned at the center of attention. Rather than assess him on that reality and his on-field ability, many voices reduced him to marketing, treating visibility as proof of hype instead of performance. Cam Ward pushed back on that framing. His point was simple: judge Sanders by the same criteria applied to other rookies. With Sanders' resume, production, leadership, and composure, most first-year quarterbacks would be discussed as long-term cornerstones. The evaluation should be consistent, focused on development and results, not perception.
This is the process with Shedeur, who I know is a buddy of yours, and how do you think both of you guys will end up doing it?
I think we'll both end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think the work that me and him are willing to put in, the relationship we have to constantly compete each and every day, to better our craft, for ourselves. I just think it's gonna end up paying off for us in the long run.
Do you guys kid each other about who's going first and how much that matters to you?
Yeah, we play around, we joke around with it. Really don't mean nothing. Draft pick will never mean anything. At the end of the day, you got to show whether you can prove each and every Sunday. You can't just do it 1 year.
Disrespect shows up in two patterns. First, Shedeur Sanders is repeatedly framed through his father, Deion Sanders, as if lineage erases his own work. Discussion drifts to pedigree instead of what the film shows. Second, his visibility is treated with suspicion. His audience reach, partnerships, and ability to lift ratings are labeled hype rather than recognized as value. Instead of acknowledging that he drives demand and expands the stage for his team, critics call it an unfair edge. The result is a skewed evaluation. Star power is held against him while on-field production gets pushed aside. The standard should be consistent. Assess the tape and the development, not the last name or the attention it brings.
Well, Ward, we're microfact.
Cam Ward's remarks went beyond defending Shedeur Sanders. They confronted how the league manages star power. The reality is simple. The NFL markets visibility, but resists it when a player doesn't follow the expected script. Rookies are supposed to be quiet, deferential, and grateful for limited leverage. Sanders arrived with leverage, brand reach, major endorsements, and confidence. And that presence was recast as entitlement. Instead of treating those factors as earned advantages, much of the commentary used them to diminish him. Ward called out that contradiction. The same influence the league sells to audiences is criticized when a young player exercises it. His point is a standards problem, not a personality dispute. Evaluate Sanders on his preparation, leadership, and results. Don't penalize him for having a platform or for using the leverage that the modern NFL itself helps create.
Now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, who needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy.
Cleveland became the center of the conversation. With Shedeur Sanders attached to a major Nike partnership, the expectation was straightforward. He should be given real game reps. The Browns instead leaned on Joe Flacco as the default choice, treating stability as the safer path while sidelining a quarterback with clear cultural and commercial pull. Each week Sanders didn't see the field, scrutiny grew. Commentary questioned the value of his contract environment and relevance, and fan debate shifted from development to doubt. That wasn't measured evaluation. It was a delay framed as prudence that eroded confidence in the process. Cam Ward reset the terms of the debate. He pointed to an uneven standard. When veterans or other young players secure significant endorsements, it's considered smart business. When Sanders does it at scale, it's recast as ego or hype. Even the scope of his off-field agreements became ammunition against him rather than evidence of market demand. Ward's position is simple. Use one standard. Assess Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and progression, not on discomfort with his platform. Treat visibility as an asset, not a disqualifier. The issue isn't attitude or branding, it's the consistency of the evaluation. Ward called it directly. The treatment has been unequal, and it should be corrected by aligning opportunity with performance criteria.
Fans need to recognize there's not a team in the league he'd start for. Not one. That's not ridiculous, that's not unfair, that's not a vast conspiracy.
Shedeur Sanders fans are Angel Reese fans. They're just fair weather fans who don't really give a fuck about the sport. Most of them are just Deion fucking groupies that followed him when he went to fucking Colorado, just like Angel Reese's fans had never watched basketball prior to her playing at LSU, and they followed her to the WNBA and don't know shit about the sport. That's it. Now Deion fucking groupies are running around acting like, oh, this is payback to his dad.
The timing is pivotal. Shedeur Sanders isn't trying to blend into the league's background. He's shaping the agenda. He drives debate segments, fuels short-form highlights, and moves merchandise at a pace most rookies never approach. By the metrics that define modern attention, he is the draw. Yet, a segment of observers continues to undercut him. Not not because of shortcomings on tape, but because of discomfort with how prominent he already is. Cam Ward put words to what many could see. Coverage around Sanders has been filtered through reaction to his visibility, rather than a clear read of his performance and growth. The market has already weighed in. Demand is real, not manufactured. Nike's record-level rookie endorsement aligned with that reality, signaling long-term value and cultural reach. This exposes a core contradiction. The NFL depends on star power to sell tickets, fill stadiums, and boost ratings, but it resists stars who set terms on their own. Visibility is celebrated until a player exercises it. The fix is straightforward. Apply one standard. Evaluate Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and results, and treat his platform as the asset it is. If the league benefits from his presence, its evaluation practices should reflect that same reality, consistently and without penalty for scale. Shedeur Sanders does not depend on league promotion. He established his platform before the NFL and continues to expand it on his own terms. That autonomy challenges the status quo. Cam Ward's support was more than a defense of a teammate. It was a warning that if the league holds to outdated expectations, it risks falling behind the very players who drive audience attention and revenue. Claims that Sanders lacks real popularity ignore measurable facts. A large, active following, consistent merchandise demand, and sustained coverage across major outlets. Doubts about his standing as a quarterback overlook his college production and growth indicators. The pattern is familiar. Efforts to minimize him increase his reach. Each skeptical headline widens the spotlight, and each dismissive take creates more engagement. You cannot reduce a player built for visibility by arguing he should be less visible. The practical outcome is the opposite. Scrutiny becomes signal. Sanders is not merely enduring criticism, he is turning it into momentum, converting attention into leverage on and off the field.